But right now, we want to bring in a special guest that we have this morning to talk about a very important topic, not only impacting our country, but particularly here in Hampton Roads as well. When we are talking about gun violence, and there's an opportunity as we look to a new General Assembly and a leadership that's coming into Virginia for a lot of conversation and topics to happen at our state level when it comes to ways to reduce gun violence and look at our gun laws here. So I want to bring in Joshua Horwitz. He is the co-director of the John Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions. We appreciate you for joining us here for Live Impact News, Josh.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Tomorrow we know that the General Assembly will be back here in Virginia, and then on Saturday we have Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who is going to become the state's first woman to become governor. Her inauguration happening on Saturday, and with that, the Democrats also control all three phases of state legislature. A lot of conversation has been on gun violence prevention laws. You've been looking at this very intently as well. What are some of the top things you think will likely come to the table in the state of Virginia here as this new wave of leadership comes into play?
Yeah, I think it's a really important discussion. We've got a great new legislature and governor who are gun violence prevention champions. We definitely need this in Virginia. Almost 1,200 Virginians died by gun violence in 2024. That's one every 8 hours. So it's a big issue. Things that we're looking to come up and we think are very important. We want to continue to improve the state's red flag law. We want better safe storage requirements for children, to make sure children don't have access to firearms. And most importantly, we want a robust firearm purchaser licensing law in Virginia because we believe that will save lives.
Okay, that last portion there, you were talking about firearm purchaser licensing rules there. I know another word for that is permit to purchase. Can you kind of break that down, explain that to
Yeah.
those of our viewers who may need a little bit of an explainer, and then how that comes into play with all of this?
Yeah, so most people don't realize this, but you don't need a license to purchase a firearm in Virginia. A bunch of other states have done that, and the evidence shows that those states are safer from gun violence. We need to do that in Virginia, just like you need a license to drive a car. And so the things that we think are important, like to get that license so you can go purchase a firearm, is it should include a requirement for firearm safety training. You should be able to safely operate your firearm. Second, it should have fingerprints so we can verify your identification. Third, you should actually have to interact with law enforcement with that application. That part really reduces the straw purchases, firearm trafficking, other people buying a gun illegally for somebody else. And the fourth is that law enforcement, to do good background checks, needs more time. So we want to increase the waiting period time up to 30 days. That doesn't mean it will take 30 days, but law enforcement will have the time to do the background check they need and resolve any conflict. And when you do that, you see really strong results. We've seen states like Connecticut enact firearm purchasing laws, and their homicide and suicide rates have gone down. In Missouri, they got rid of their laws, and unfortunately, the homicide and suicide went up. These laws work, and they're very popular in Virginia.
You know, another topic when it comes to all of this, and we've unfortunately had to report on situations where you have children who get their hands on firearms and harm themselves, they harm others, and you have adults who are held responsible in most parts in those cases, whether, most time it's an accident, but we know that that is ultimately on the responsibility of those who own the weapons in the home. How can Virginia do a better job of strengthening when it comes to storing weapons, making sure particularly that they stay out of the hand of children and young people?
Yeah, Virginia does not have a clear safe storage requirement right now. We think there should be a very clear safe storage requirement that makes people lock their firearms when they're not in use or not on the person. That's number one. The second piece is we have a child access prevention law, which means that adults need to do what they can to prevent people under 14 from getting their hands on firearms. We think that should extend to 18. So what basically, except people who are 17 and under should not have access to firearms, and it's the gun owner's responsibility to make sure children don't have access to firearms. So clear safe storage mandate and bringing the child access prevention law up through 17 years.
And if people are in a situation where it is proven they're not responsible, or they are, not someone who maybe should have a gun for whatever reason it may be, what kind of suggestions or thoughts you think can be made when it comes to making sure those individuals who could make others at most risk do not have access or possession of a weapon?
Well, for people who have not yet acquired weapons, firearm purchase or licensing is a good way to prevent people who shouldn't have guns from acquiring them. Once they've acquired guns, we think that the red flag law in Virginia is a very effective tool. It's a temporary protective order, allows law enforcement to go to a judge and get remove that firearm for 6 months when someone's in crisis. We're seeing really good results with that law, but we want to make sure that family members have access as well. There may be no time to call law enforcement, and family members should have the same ability when they see a loved one in crisis, whether that's to harm somebody else or harm themselves, that they should have access to the state's red flag order. So we want to expand that so that family members have access. Other states have done that. It's worked out well, and we believe that would really help in Virginia as well.
We were just talking with a few of our local cities here in Hampton Roads, Norfolk and Newport News. The mayor of Newport News and the Commonwealth's attorney of Norfolk, they were talking about how they had seen a major drop in like homicides and some violent crimes here within the communities. And we've heard that from other areas as well, here in Hampton Roads and further. Is there anything that you would directly maybe attribute that to? Maybe there are trends that should continue into this new year. Anything that you specifically note that say, hey, these are the things that work, these are the things we should build on moving forward?
Yeah, well, I think that we saw a big spike during the pandemic of gun violence, and we've seen that recede somewhat.
Yeah.
It's certainly too high still. Like, let's make that very clear. And suicide is at almost all-time highs right now, firearm suicide. So homicide is down, and that's great. I do think that the states, it's in 2020 passed a good, strong group of laws. We need to improve on that, but I think that helps. I think the fact that we've invested more in our communities, that helps. I think that, what really helps is all of the above. Everything focused on reducing gun violence, from better policing, community involvement, and good laws. And I think that's starting to take effect in the Commonwealth, but we have a unique opportunity to really drive those numbers down now, and we should do that through laws like firearm purchase or licensing, child access prevention, better red flag laws. We can do it, and it's still way too high. We've made progress. Let's continue to do a great job moving forward.
All right. So if people want to learn more about the solutions that you're putting forth, or some of the things that may be out there that may have worked in other places, and to consider it, because obviously at the end of the day, people are going to want to tell their lawmakers what they want and what they don't. Exactly right. So where can they go to learn more about these types of solutions that you're talking about?
You can Google the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions, and we have some great material about Virginia there. We have great material about gun violence and across the United States, all the research I've mentioned. And you can still see that Virginia has a long way to go. It's far from the best when it comes to state gun violence prevention. A lot to do here. We're making progress, but let's keep up that and come visit us at our website.
All right. Joshua Horwitz, the co-director of the John Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions. Thank you so much for taking time and joining us here on the stream. We're going to have you back at some point as well, particularly once we see what all unfolds here in the General Assembly. So, Joshua, thank you so much for joining us.
Anytime.
All right. I'll hold you to it. Okay.